It is important for a number of reasons. One, it's the time that we get to honor the victims of the genocide. But it's also the time not only to honor the victims, but also to remind ourselves that what led to this tragic event, if not well managed, there are no guarantees that it would never happen again. So the remembrance not only honors the victims, but also is a time to remind ourselves that in honoring the victims, we amplify their voices, but we also remind that what led to the genocide, particularly the genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda, is something that could be repeated again. The Rwandan genocide, the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, was not the first genocide. It's in recorded history. It was one of the most vicious ones at the end of the 20th century. But it happened after so many years, after another genocide had taken place. So those are therefore lessons for the rest of the world. That genocide is real, but importantly is to always guard against the causes. And so the remembrance therefore takes care of all that.
How do you convey such a strong message to the kids who were born after the genocide? How do you make them understand and so that this can never happen again?
You must have seen the performance of the kids here. First of all, I want to thank our colleagues from the UN who were able to put this together. But I think you had the powerful message of these kids. They and so their message to me was not only strong, but it is even a reminder to the old folks. And look, the kids actually, if well brought up, can do better. You know, genocide starts with words. It is those words eventually that go transcending into the actual extermination of a people. So if we can teach our young people that words can be destructive as much as they can be useful, and so they use words for good as opposed to using them for division, for hatred, for discrimination. And so, yes, the only way, again, to remember and to remind ourselves is that even the young ones need to know what happened. Because as we have a saying in my language, that those who don't know where they came from, they never know where they are and where they are going. So even for the generations that come after us, hearing about genocide is one thing, but for them to understand that it happened, that it could happen again, is important that they get educated about it.
In your speech there, you mentioned something along the lines of African problems should have African solutions. Are we that strong now that we can guard whatever we have without international interference, do you think?
The answer to that is yes and no. First of all, it starts from ourselves. What do we want as Africans, and are we able to do it as Africans? Or do we still seek help, particularly from the north? Because that's where we think the solutions come from. Much as we also need to remind it that actually most of our problems also emanate from there. So when I say yes and no, true, if we work together, there is so much we can do. Tanzania is a living example of how a country can be united, despite having so many nationalities and so many different ethnic groups. But you've stood together as one country since independence. Some of us were not that lucky to have that start. Yes, like in the case of Rwanda, our society was quite homogeneous, as I said, for over 860 years, until colonialism came in. So the 45 years of colonialism in Rwanda undid and unpacked completely what our ancestors had built over centuries of years. So therefore, and much as I may have digressed, but we had been able to put ourselves together as a nation, as Rwanda. By the way, Rwanda, we don't get our name from any colonial entity. We've been Rwanda since day one, since 1032, when the first founders of our kingdom named it Rwanda. So it was an African doing, and so many other African nations. But what eventually befell us, which is also what befell everybody else, was the movement from the north and the partition of Africa in 1885. And so, yes, back to your question, there are certain things that we can do as Africans, but there are also shared values and commitments globally. And therefore, where we can't, it is only logical that we could seek a hand, even from outside of Africa. But I think it is within us to do most of what ought to be done by ourselves. Whether it's the intellect, whether it's the infrastructure, we have everything. We have the numbers. We now have the youngest population. But yeah, we need to put this together to be able to pull it off.
I mean, 1994, horrible, horrible 100 days. I just want to know, when you speak to Mr. Kagame, how did he manage to bring the nation together and build a powerhouse that it is now? I mean, does he confide to you and say, this wasn't an easy thing?
But definitely, I mean, I think that's again where leadership comes in. It fell on him at the time as a leader. One, to take on the responsibility, first of all, to stop the genocide. But you see, in the bigger scheme of things, genocide is a destruction of people, but it doesn't leave even infrastructure. So essentially, we did not only have destroyed people and scattered people, we also had a failed nation, a failed state in its real sense. So it had to take a lot of courage and strength and wisdom for somebody to be able to lead those who are still standing into a different direction. So I think speaking for him, he had two choices. Yeah. Either agree and we go as a failed state and Rwanda is written off the map, as was, I think, the desire of the genocide perpetrators, or say, no, this is not who we are. The real Rwanda is people who stood for you, people who are united before, people who had rebuilt Rwanda, who had the Rwandan brand before this. And so he chose the very obvious one, but which is not the easiest, that yes, we've sunk to our lowest, but we can come back. And so Rwanda has been lucky to have him as a leader. And but we also thank Rwandans who have not only agreed to be part of that, not agreeing to be a failed state, but also to agree to rebuild, to renew, and to reunite as a people and as a nation. There are lots of things that have been achieved over the last 31 years, but we still have a long way to go. But we think we are now in the right direction.
I was just about to ask that question. 31 years is a lot of years, but the wounds can be still fresh. I mean, can you confidently say now that the healing bit is done and the country can move on without any, well, I understand you have to be quite careful, but I mean, the healing has been quite difficult, hasn't it?
Salim, healing is a process. So any process, it's difficult to have a process of that nature to be time-bound. If you want to make it time-bound, then you are likely to fail. So you have to give it sufficient time for you to achieve the desired end state of indeed having yourselves as seen as healing, as having seen as healed. Listen, you might think 31 years, yes, to those who are not born, they think it's long time ago. But those of us who lived it, who saw it, it's not a long time ago. The guy you saw here who said a poem in Kinyarwanda is a genocide survivor. He knows people who killed his family. They are still alive. So when we talk about healing, these people, have to live on the same hills, as it were. They have to live in the same communities. So therefore, the healing process is one, and really we salute the survivors for their courage. And you wouldn't understand the depth or the magnitude of the trauma that they have unless you've felt what they had to go through. But at the end, most of them have chosen to indeed to heal. And it's not forgetting about the past, but it's saying, look, I'm not going to be stuck in my past, because when you get stuck in your past, then you don't move on. As they say, our eyes are in front of us to tell us that, focus on where you are going. Yes, they know where, they know what befell them, but for them to continue moving ahead is that they have to embrace that past and use it as a catalyst and to get energy and strength to move ahead. It's not easy, but it's doable. We've seen it in Rwanda. We've got people, if you get an opportunity, you should come and see people who committed genocide, living side by side with survivors. And they've managed to forge this relationship. So, long story short, the healing process is not time-bound. It takes time, and actually, in most cases, the longer it takes, actually, the deeper it gets. People tend to, and this is people who studied psychology would probably offer a better explanation. I'm not a psychologist. But we also see those trends. But that doesn't mean that people are not looking forward. It's because it's like, you remembering your grandfather because you had a good relationship with them. But with genocide, it's a different, because it's the problem with genocide, it's the intent to destroy a people, to erase a people, so anybody who lived through it and they have that reflection, coming out of it indeed requires a lot of courage. But the current setup, having had a government of national unity, having had leadership that embodies oneness and togetherness, encourages us to yes, to remember what happened, to always be mindful of what happened, but to continue focusing on where we are heading.
As a Rwandan national, how proud are you looking back at what the country's been through and where it is right now?
Honestly, if I said miraculous, would be probably even an understatement. I mean, in 1994, today, 31 years ago, Kigali was littered with dead bodies. The first thing we did when we were taking over was to clean the streets of dead bodies. We had dogs eating dead, feeding off these people. We had vultures. So if you have that picture of a city littered with dead bodies, a country littered with either people running away or no infrastructure, our past at the time, past is past, our past was so bad that even after stopping the genocide, we didn't inherit anything. We didn't inherit any functional institution. So if you remember where we were 31 years ago and you see where we are today, for those, we see it as a miracle, but it's a miracle that we've lived. It's a miracle that we've contributed to. I'll tell you a personal story. Some years back, I think 2009, 2008, my kids came home from school and they had homework. And so they asked me to help them with solving a mathematical problem. And I couldn't remember the formula, so I reached out my phone to check, Google the formula. Yeah. And so I did that and said, okay, this is the formula, you run with it. And then jokingly I told them that, look, I said, you must be lucky. I said, today, I could do this. I said, do you realize that there was a time this country didn't have even phones? And so they looked at me and they laughed, like, hey, Daddy, said, how did you live without phones? Excuse me. I said, I'm not talking about cell phones. I said there was a time this country didn't even have landlines. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have anything functional. But for them, they were like, but wait a minute. So how did you live without phones? How did you live? So, and I was trying to tell them that even cabinet ministers had to talk on radios.
Two-way radios.
Yeah, two-way radios, handheld radios. Because that was the medium of communication at the time, at least in the first 1 month or so. And so that is how far we've come as a country.
Where do you see Rwanda 31 years from now?
Our aspirations are to be an upper income country, and we think it is doable. It is doable. We saw in 1994, Rwanda's GDP was probably $3 billion. It's now 15, so it's quadrupled over the years. Per capita rose from less than $200 to now over $800. So with more hard work and more investments, we've seen people have been lifted out of poverty in excess of 1 million over the last 20 years. So it is achievable. We've also seen other countries, excuse me, particularly countries from the Far East, that have been able to achieve this. And we, at the end of the day, we are the same people. We might come from the same different regions and different continents, but I think within us, we have the same brains, we have the same, we just have that courage and the vision and the leadership to drive us to that. And I think that would be my wish. But I also have a firm belief that it is achievable.